All of the things that make 3D printing amazing are lost on this. I think this is the exact kind of thing you should 3D print.
This video was filmed back in December of 2019. So no, I'm not flying all over the world in the middle of all this craziness to visit my friends, but it was really nice to get to hang out with them last year when things were a little more normal. Also, in case you can't tell by the title of the video, there's some adult language in this video. Here you go, enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Danny, the 3D Printing DM here. Welcome to 3D Printing Tabletop, a channel where we cover all things 3D printing for tabletop games. You notice my set, the backdrop's a little bit different than normal. I'm here with Jeremy from...
We're not in your garage anymore.
This is Black Magic Craft, and Jeremy has a YouTube channel where he makes stuff by hand for D&D, much like I 3D print stuff for D&D and other tabletop games. And Jeremy's been making stuff for 4 years now?
About 4 years, yeah.
Okay, so he's got quite the collection back here, and it's beautiful in person. And I want to share some of that collection with you, but I want to take the opportunity to talk about this because you can 3D print a lot of stuff. And I think having dabbled in the handcrafting world too, there's some things that might be totally possible to 3D print, and there's other things that might not be as practical.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for each of them, I think.
Yeah. So this video is called Shit You Shouldn't 3D Print. But they're also going to be shit you should 3D print.
Probably, yeah. I don't know what that is yet. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're just going to go through some of his stuff and look at it kind of one by one and talk about whether it'd be a good idea or not. So let's do it. Let's just jump in.
All right, this is pretty easy.
Yes.
This is pretty easy. I can't craft that.
Yeah, minis, yes, definitely you should 3D print. And I think that now more than ever, there's so many people making really cool minis. There's so many people doing an amazing variety, better than even 1 or 2 years ago, and printers are so much cheaper.
That being said, you absolutely, if you just want some slick minis that are high quality, you get your files, there's a million of them out there, you print that up, you got it. It's not to say you can't craft them if you want to.
Yeah.
But it requires a certain skill set. You know, obviously people, have been making minis out of green stuff forever.
Yeah.
I've made my own minis, and some of those that I've made are the crafts that I'm the most proud of.
Yeah.
But not practical. And also some of the most difficult, stressful builds I've ever done. So this is one of the things that is most appealing to me about 3D printing.
Right, agreed. So I think we determined that actual minis, shit you should 3D print.
Absolutely.
Some of your earlier videos, right?
Yeah, this is like crafting 101. First day as a crafter, build something like this.
And you make this out of with hot wire foam?
You can make it with, it's all styrofoam. You can cut it with a hot wire or a knife. So if you have a hot wire, really easy, really quick. But if you don't, just like a box cutter and a minute, and you have a bunch of rocks. So this one, to me, is pretty obvious and pretty easy. I don't think you should print this.
The only real benefit, I think, to 3D printing something like this would be durability.
Durability, for sure. This stuff, it's pretty durable in the sense that if I throw it, it's not going to crack or explode. It's not like resin or plaster. It's going to bounce. But if I wanted to, I could crush this and just destroy it because it's soft. So in that sense, a 3D printed one is better. And I think depending on where and how you play is a factor. I play here at home. I grab something off the shelf, I put it on the table, we play, I put it back. If you're playing at a club, you're going to conventions and you're throwing a bunch of stuff in Rubbermaid bins, then maybe having something that's printed might be better. I
still think, though, based on most of what we talked about, that these rocks would probably be shit you shouldn't 3D print.
Yeah, because really, if you damage it, you just make another one really fast.
Easy. Kind of in the middle here, and we talk about these pillars.
Okay, so this, to me, this serves the same game purpose as those rock pillars. It's just a little line of sight thing. It's basically the same shape, but this one has a lot more detail to it.
Yeah.
Now, in my mind, I still think this is such an easy project to do with foam. This is foam from a dollar store, cut in layers. Like anyone could do this.
Yeah.
If you want to try your first thing, this is a great test piece. I still wouldn't print this just for the amount of material and time. It's a fun project to do, but I could see the justification for printing something like this.
I actually think this is a little bit different than the rocks because you don't have the same type of organic textures like the swoops and stuff.
And with the rocks, one of the justifications I think we didn't talk about for crafting is that everyone ends up looking different.
Yeah.
It's not
totally
one model or model A, B, C, D in the rock set. Everyone comes out differently. Whereas with this, you don't really necessarily want it or need it to come out differently. So you can just bang out a lot of these. And I got to say, while I enjoy crafting those, I own 8 of these. I would love to own 30 of them. And I just can't be bothered to make more because I'm busy doing something else. So having that running on a printer in the background while I'm doing the other things I want to do, yeah, I'd say that's shit you should maybe 3D print.
Yeah,
maybe.
It's like a 50-50. Here we go. Let's talk about trees for a second.
We got to talk about trees as a craft. Forget should you 3D print it.
Should you make it?
Should you craft it? And I got to say, a tree like this, there's lots of resources. You can make this. Lots of people do it. Luke has a million videos how to make a tree.
Howdy guys.
I could not be bothered. I would never want to make one of these trees from scratch because there's companies that just make them.
You bought that?
This is Woodland Scenics. This is a model railroad tree that I bought. I modified it, added a nice base to it, touched up the flocking paint, but put very little effort into it because it was ready to go off the shelf.
So you bought it with the flocking and stuff on it?
Yeah, this came basically with the trunk and the flocking on it and just a removable crappy little base. So I sculpted a little actual base for it and painted it and blended it in. And I put a lot of adhesives and stuff to make the flocking stick better.
Yeah.
I would never waste my time making this by hand. Making an armature, crafting it, I think is insane. Some people like to do it, not me. And I think it's very hard to justify unless you're really into it. So 100%, if I was printing something with trees, I would possibly print the armature, print the branches, and then still do the handcrafted flocking.
Like handmade flocking.
Yeah, maybe. But even that, I would still rather just buy it.
See, my thing is that this flocking right here, I'm a traveling DM.
Yeah.
And so if I had this on my shelf and I would just take it out, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But if you're going to conventions, if you're running D&D...
It's going to fall apart on you.
That's right. But the trade-off is if you want realistic trees. No 3D printed tree is going to feel realistic, no matter what you do.
And if I wanted to run a bunch of games at conventions and throw stuff in a bin, I would absolutely want to use plastic, fully plastic trees, printed or cast or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be taking that. But that being said, I have other trees that I've made that are a lot more durable that I would throw in a bin, but they look a lot less realistic. Yeah. They look cartoony and chunky, so...
We're probably leaning towards trees being shit you should not 3D print.
Or craft.
I'm gonna go controversial and say dungeon tiles.
Dungeon tiles?
And not just any dungeon tiles. These are the original BMC dungeon tiles. Those of you who have watched Jeremy's channel will get what I'm talking about.
No walls, simple utility tiles. Nothing fancy.
Jeremy, do you think we should 3D print this?
Never, not in a million years.
Why?
I just wouldn't want to. I mean, I can make a set of these tiles in an afternoon. They're so fast. Like, to get them to the point of print ready, we're talking 10 cents of material.
Yeah.
You know, if that even.
Yeah.
And just super easy. This is, you know, my kid could do this. I wouldn't let my kid use the knife, though. But you get my point. I don't know. Why would you print something this basic? All of the things that make 3D printing amazing are lost on this. There's no detail. There's no complicated designs. There's no interlocking mechanism. If you want walls and interlocking things and things that perfectly fit a certain size of magnet or clips or whatever, yeah, print that stuff because I can't make it. But this doesn't have any of that. This is so plain. It's just a block. I don't see the benefit of printing something like that.
I will say, if you really are one of these people, for example, that has like a Dwarven Forge collection and you want to make like supplemental pieces, you know, that have the walls like combined like this or whatever.
Absolutely print it.
I do agree with that. But I think if you play like I do, which is also how Jeremy plays, which is kind of using this as negative space,
freeform. Right?
Just freeform, where these just can be this different rooms and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to put this down than to worry about interlocking everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually want those to interlock. For the way I play, interlocking would be a hindrance.
Right.
Right? Interlocking is great when you want to set up rooms off to the side and then pick them up, drop them down.
Yeah, which is how most 3D printing people use it.
I don't run games like that. I'm not going to... If I'm running a module that has a map, right? Something like Wave Echo Cave or whatever, and you're doing that, I would never in a million years even consider recreating that map in full.
I gotta show you somebody who did.
I've seen it. And it's amazing. It's super cool, and I would love to play on it.
Yeah.
But I would never make that. I would never craft it. I would never print it. I would never run a game like that. I mean, maybe it would be neat, but I probably wouldn't do it because I'm gonna go. Here's room 1. You do some stuff. Okay, room 2. Now that's room 2, and I'm done. I don't want to waste my time.
Like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly. Like I run my games like a side-scrolling video game, right? Top down, just one room after the next. So
dungeon tiles, definitely shit you should not 3D print unless you wanted to be a supplement to something like Dwarven Forge, which has to have a very specific look that is kind of this like very realistic.
A lot of details, but more specifically, I mean, you pulled out these 3x3 tiles.
Yeah.
I use them sometimes, but the tiles I usually use are bigger.
Let's get this.
Yeah, great. So this is what I use 90% of the time. So I can lay out things quickly, and I'll use the same method that Dungeon Craft uses, where this isn't even the full room. I might put a couple scatter pieces to define the space in the room. So my most valuable tile are these large ones.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's going to tell me that you should print a 12x12 dungeon tile. Maybe they would.
There are people that would.
But still, you're printing parts and putting them together, right?
Yeah. But at that point, you know, it's a little bit easier to just make an organic piece.
And if I want to go through the effort of extra steps and a more complicated build, because that kind of print is more involved. So if I'm going to be more involved, I'm going to make something nicer, and I'm going to do what I did where I molded and cast. So if I want something nicer that's solid and not foam, you know, this is durable. I would throw this in a bin. This is made of resin on MDF. So rather than printing a bunch of stuff and putting it together, this is a hand sculpted, molded, and cast piece. It's resin, you know.
But I will say this, Jeremy, that this is like way beyond my personal skill level. And if I wanted, like, this is, even if it wasn't ideal, I don't think
Crafters Day 1.
That's correct. I don't think I have the ability to do this at this point in my like skill level. So printing might be my only option.
Everybody, if you can figure out printing this, you can figure out molding and casting it. It's just a matter of what you want to put the effort into learning. It is not complicated. You know, if you can troubleshoot a machine, you can pour resin. If you can deal with resin in your photon, you can deal with 2-part resin on this. You might not be able to sculpt the original master. Yeah. But I would say if I was in making something like this and I didn't want to sculpt it, I would find a design I really loved, and print out one master, and then I would mold it and cast it. I wouldn't print 100 tiles.
That's clever. And there are people that do that, especially with like a resin printer. You don't have to worry as much about layer lines. You could totally print one specific tile and use it as a master. Absolutely. I know people that have done that. So tiles, definitely, in my opinion, probably...
situational.
Yeah, in general, I don't think you shouldn't 3D print. Let's talk about things like
dungeon
these little... Scatter. Dungeon scatter, like little terrain pieces here, right? This is a bookshelf.
Yeah.
A bookcase. You made this?
It's 100% handmade, all the little items. And actually everything in here is handmade. None of this is like bits from a kit. Like the books, the candle, the little scrolls, that's all handmade.
So you think this is something we should 3D print?
100%.
Why?
There's 2 reasons. One is that it's just getting intricate detail on something that small is really hard to do well.
Yeah.
Right? It takes some actual real skill to do that. Even now, you know, that I'm not 3D printing yet, or I'm just about to start, I've gone towards using bookshelves that come out of kits. Yeah. Right? Like plastic kits and stuff like that.
Terrain crate.
Because it's just so much more practical, but the big reason is mostly weight.
Yeah.
So this is a really small item made out of foam, and it's amazing that this is made out of foam. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But it's very light, you know. that can,
says it all, folks.
That can be a problem. I would rather this be weighted plastic, and there's workarounds for crafting. You can weight them and stuff.
Like a penny or something.
Exactly. But I would much rather have a solid piece of resin or plastic that has some weight on it and just be ready to go.
I agree.
But then something like this, like a little fountain, I think this is where it diverges into absolutely you can craft this because It's really simple. It doesn't require a lot of skill. You can have a lot of creative freedom in it, do neat effects. And this is the thing that it sits nicely. It doesn't matter that it's made out of foam because of the shape and footprint of it, and because it has resin in it that adds some weight. So scatter, I think it depends on the piece.
Now let's talk about terrain that requires more skill level. We've got like 1,000 buildings here. I don't know if I'll be able to capture the beauty that is this building on camera without stealing from Jeremy's videos. Jeremy's not going to brag about his stuff, so I will. There's obviously a lot of love that went into this building in particular. But like if you look here, there's like a lot of different texture differences in the house, which looks like kind of plaster that's worn in different parts. These like windows, is that hot glue?
It's like water effects.
Wow. And it looks like see-through, man. I feel like I'm in the Christmas Carol.
You can put a light in there if you want.
The question is this something that we should 3D print or not?
I mean, I think that this is the whole reason that crafting exists.
Yeah.
So in terms of satisfaction and artistry and creativity, which most people running D&D, if you're a DM, if you're the kind of person that's like, I'm going to run D&D, I'm going to craft a world in my head, I'm going to tell a story, there's a part of you that wants to build and be creative and create a world. And to me, this is the apex of creating that world. This is the pinnacle of that creativity. And for me, I would never in a million years want to 3D print this, because to me, this is the perfect thing to build with my hands. However, there's a lot of items on this that I absolutely would and will be printing.
Right. Like what?
So, for example, this house, I would say, is 99% handcrafted. There's some small elements that aren't. One thing, like this door, this is handcrafted. I made that door, I molded it, I cast it, it's resin, this is mine, it's my door. But these window frames are not mine. They're MDF laser cut windows from a company, because crafting that doesn't make sense. It's not practical. You know, the little chimney pieces are glue bottle caps. So I didn't craft those and I didn't craft those. Everything else is 100% handmade. With a 3D printer running, printing windows, printing doors, printing a little lantern, maybe a little flower pot, a little bird to sit on the roof. Yeah. Those are all things that I think you should absolutely 3D print and mix.
If you want the satisfaction of making your own unique building that nobody else is going to have in the world, and you want to go through the art and the skill, then this is absolutely not something you should 3D print.
Yeah.
So there are people that watch a channel that do more than D&D, and especially like you, Jeremy, you make stuff that is not just D&D.
Yeah, like I'm venturing into other stuff.
Sci-fi, realistic, or modern. This is like a dumpster and this little shipping container. Are these things you should 3D print?
These are things that it's hard to... This is a tricky one, because to me, this little dumpster is a pain in the ass to build. And there's every justification in the world to print this. I think this is the exact kind of thing you should 3D print. That being said, this is one of the things I'm most proud of in my collection.
Yeah.
And I loved making it. I had so much fun and satisfaction making this that this is also 100% a thing you should craft.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one. Do you enjoy problem solving and finding, like, for me, what's going to be that little rod? On here, it's the stem of a Q-tip.
Look at that.
On this, it's spaghetti. This is dry spaghetti, because I didn't have any styrene rods that were the right size. So I used spaghetti and super glue.
Yeah.
And to me, that was such a satisfying moment.
Look at this.
Hell yeah, spaghetti. Like, are you for real? This is awesome. And then doing all the little clasps on there.
Yeah.
But that is not practical.
Not.
Printing this would be so much smarter.
Yeah.
For sure.
I would probably say most people that just want stuff on the table, if you just want dumpster and you just want shipping container.
If you're the kind of person that's asking the question, should I craft this or print this? The answer is print it.
Yeah.
Because if you're asking that question, you don't innately just want to build it.
That's right.
But if you want to build it, then these are the kind of things that are such a pleasure to build.
And for me, I do like the problem solving, but this isn't the type of thing that I really want to put a lot of love into. It's just a dumpster. I would probably be totally fine just printing this and have just as much fun with the painting and coming up with how to weather it and get as much satisfaction.
You still get all that satisfaction out of the finishing.
That's right.
Once it's an object, after that, it's the same process of painting.
Exactly.
At the same time, I poured like passion into building these, and I have 2 of them, and I love them. I want a dozen of them for my game, and I don't want to build them again.
Yeah.
I don't want to build them again because I want to go on to the next. Because building it again is not problem solving. It's just repeating that work. I'm
not comfortable saying this is shit you should 3D print or you shouldn't, but definitely things you might 3D print.
It's the perfect thing to print, though, for sure. 100%.
Agreed. Okay. There are a lot of one-off pieces that people will make in the 3D printing world because they'll make like they'll make everything for a room.
Your boss fight.
Exactly. This is a boss fight.
This is a boss fight. Part of the enjoyment for making something like this is that it is a one-off thing for a game. So as I'm making this and I'm spending a day making it, I'm thinking about my game and I'm making that world and how I'm going to use it. Yeah. And it's part of my process for prep. Yeah. You know, when people might go to the coffee shop, sit down with their journal and start prepping their game, I'm doing that internally in my head as I build. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to add these cool arches. Oh, you know what?
Icicles.
Yeah, it would be cool if these used to be the cathedral and there used to be glass, but when they put the Frozen King in there, they put stone in there to seal it up. So I'm going to put some stone, and then you know, when they defeat him, then it starts to crack and it opens to. And while I'm building that, that's when the DM mind is going. Yeah. If I just set up the printer and had it running, well, I'd go piss off and do something else, and my mind wouldn't be in it. It keeps me focused in the game, and I think for me, the number one reason I craft as a DM is because it's a hobby outside of run. I don't play very often. I play every 3 weeks. So to keep my excitement and my involvement in the game, when I'm by myself, it's building stuff like this. And yeah, you can do that while you're printing and thinking about stuff, but actually hands-on, being attached to it keeps your mind in this world, I think.
It's interesting you say that because I think this is one of the areas where I'm going to have a hard disagree with you. Building, when I was handcrafting more of my stuff before I started 3D printing, it was very much a part of my flow when I was DMing too. But now, since I started 3D printing, my process has been a little bit different, where if somebody comes out with a really cool piece that I know is only going to be a one-time set piece, I'll construct my game around that cool thing that I want to print.
Yep.
But for me at this point, I'm just kind of adopting somebody else's vision and kind of making it my own. And so I do lose that satisfaction of making it my own.
Saying that though, I absolutely 100% would never 3D print this, build it. But in this same encounter, this is a Crippled God 3D printed boss mini. Yeah. This is a Reaper Bones little sarcophagus.
Yeah.
And these are Terrain Crate candles. Now moving forward, once we set up my printer, I would print all of these things and build this. And I would have more of these things than I do now because I would be able to unlock so much stuff.
So for Jeremy, this is a very clear shit we should not 3D print. For me, this is shit I might 3D print. And I think we've talked about a lot of things that we shouldn't 3D print and a lot of things that might be good ideas to 3D print and a lot of things that might, depending on your circumstances.
And I think the takeaway message for me, for your audience and mine and the two different camps and the people who cross over between both, I think the message is that should you 3D print it, there is no clear answer. This isn't a binary issue of 3D printing or crafting.
Totally.
It's got ebb and flow, and it depends on you and your needs and your wants and your interests. And I think almost every item could be justified that you should print it or that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It just depends on your perspective.
I think you started the channel for the same reason I started mine, which is we have this hobby that we love that we're using to make an immersive experience for our players. Yeah. What you enjoy in order to get to that immersive experience can change depending on what you're making.
Yeah.
And also what you're looking for is different based on the craft, whether you've done it before, whether at that point it's still a challenge for you. And there's so many factors that go into it, even for me. Thanks again for having me, Jeremy. Thanks for being on.
And now we're going to go get some. I'm going to take a little Miami boy, into the Canadian cold. It's December in Winnipeg, so you ready to go out?
No, I'm not. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Happy printing and happy gaming.
Cheers.